Hello, my name is Nelson Delgado. I'm an energy psychologist in Mississauga, Ontario, who also studies the key positioning of the celestial bodies in our solar system and the constellations that they're in and how that affects consciousness at a mass level. In this video, I'll be talking about how Neptune is transiting Aries in 2026 through 2039. And in these 13 years, there's going to be a lot of challenge regarding spiritual initiation. And this video is to help you understand that over the next 13 years, it's not going to be about becoming more certain. It's going to be about becoming more courageous and more trusting in your own inner authority to navigate the uncertainty that's coming our way. From 2026 to 2039, Neptune moves through Aries, an era that quietly reshapes how we relate to our intuition, identity, fears, creativity, and the courage to live from the inside out. And if that sounds dramatic, don't worry, this isn't the sky is falling video like you see so many on YouTube. This is more like a spiritual field guide because the truth is, a lot of people can feel something shifting. The old ways of motivating yourself or pushing through don't always work the same anymore. The noise feels louder, the world moves faster. And our inner life is asking for more of something that is deeper than just survival mode. So today I'll give you a concise and practical understanding of this 2026 to 2039 arc, plus a guide for staying grounded, awake, and open-hearted through it. And yes, there will be a call to action at the end that you can actually use in your real life. So what's this era going to feel like? So let's break it down simply. Neptune is about the unseen, intuition, spirituality, imagination, compassion, but also illusion, confusion, and self-deception. Neptune dissolves the boundaries. It melts what we thought was solid. It exposes where we're pretending. Aries, on the other hand, is fire. It's identity, initiation, courage, action. Aries says, this is who I am. This is my direction. So when Neptune moves through Aries, the big question becomes, can you act with courage when you don't have certainty? This era can feel like old identities dissolving, old motivations losing power, a deeper need for meaning rising, a heightened sense of what's real versus what's performative. Neptune in Aries can awaken spiritual bravery, or it can trigger reactivity, because Aries wants to move fast, and Neptune asks us to feel deeply. And when those two collide, you get a generation of people learning how to move from intuition, not impulse, how to act from truth, not fear, how to become a person who can say, I don't know everything, but I trust what I know inside. There's a tone often associated with Neptune, and that tone is 211.44 hertz, sometimes called an intuition or Neptune tuning frequency. Whether you take this literally, spiritually, or as a metaphor, the theme is useful. This tone is commonly associated with intuition and spiritual insight, creativity and imagination, emotional healing and compassion, mental clarity around subconscious patterns, noticing self-deception internally and externally. And what I mean by self-deception, it's when our ego is trying to deceive the knowing self within the core of our being in order to get what it's looking for and not meet the needs of the self. And the next is vibrational alignment, meaning tuning your inner state towards what feels true. And if you're like, okay, but does a frequency fix my life? No. And if it did, I would have played one sound and retired on a beach by now. But symbolically, 211.44 hertz represents something powerful, the ability to hear yourself beneath the noise. And that's one of the biggest themes of Neptune and Aries. Not louder opinions, but deeper inner listening. So, over the next 13 years, here are the shadow themes that are going to get triggered. And this is based on the gene key system. And the gene keys is a different play on astrology by integrating human design components, which are more masculine, but putting it into more of a somatic, self-empowering process that allows you to achieve full self-realization through shadow work, whether that be dealing with your repressive, your reactive natures, understanding the dilemmas, making correct choices that really resonate with you, and then after that, mastering that practice so you can embody the gifts and the graces that are associated with this era. So think of these as reoccurring emotional lessons that surface when consciousness is expanding. Here are the shadows that we're going to deal with on the intuitional, possibly even the psychic level. Here are the shadows that we'll be moving through. The first one is the one we'll be moving through in the next 2 to 3 years, and that is Gene Key 25 and the shadow of constriction and the fear of the void within us. After that, we'll be moving into the 17th challenge, which is opinion, the fear of being wrong. The next challenge, 21, control, the fear of living. After that, the 51st challenge and the shadow of agitation and the fear of sudden change. The next is the 42nd evolutionary challenge, and that is the shadow of expectation and the fear of letting go. And lastly, as Neptune starts to shift into Taurus, and that is the third evolutionary pattern of change and the shadow of chaos and the fear of powerlessness. So let's translate these into everyday language. This era can amplify rigid certainty to avoid feeling wrong, control to avoid feeling alive and vulnerable, agitation when change hits too fast, expectation that becomes emotional chains, and chaos that triggers helplessness. And at the center of all of it, right now, going on, is constriction, which starts to close the heart when the unknown appears. So if Neptune dissolves illusions, then these shadows are like the alarm system going off when illusions start to melt. And let's be honest, many of us were raised to treat uncertainty like a threat. That's how a lot of governments treat uncertainty. So when the void appears, when life gets quiet, unclear, or identity feels shaky, the instinct is clench, control, distract, decide something quickly. Anything except sitting in the unknown. But the spiritual work of this era is different. It's for us to stay present, stay open, let the deeper truth emerge. So how do you stay spiritually sovereign, clear, grounded, and empowered through 13 years of Neptune and Aries? Well, here's a distilled guide for this. There are 3 practices one can use that neutralize fear-based influence and strengthen inner authority. Practice 1. Nervous system sovereignty. Master your inner state. If your nervous system is constantly overstimulated, anxious, and outraged, or even exhausted, intuition will become faint. Neptune dissolves boundaries. Aries amplifies the impulse. That means reactivity can rise fast. So one of the most spiritual acts of this era is actually calming down. Not because you're avoiding reality, but because you're refusing to be controlled by your own overwhelm. You don't need perfection. You need rhythm. A few minutes of stillness, some breath work, a walk, stretching, journaling, nature exposure, real rest, not as a trend, as conscious hygiene, because a regulated nervous system is harder to manipulate by anything. And also, you deserve peace, like as a baseline, not as a reward for suffering. Practice number 2, discernment over dogma. Build your inner authority. Neptune blurs truth and illusion. Aries wants direction. That combo can make people feel vulnerable to rigid ideologies, charismatic certainty, quick fixes, spiritual branding that looks good but doesn't transform you. Discernment means staying open without being gullible, questioning without becoming cynical, learning to sense what's true in your lived experience. The measure of your spiritual maturity in this era isn't how convincing you sound. It's how honestly you listen, especially when your inner knowing contradicts the crowd. Practice number 3, open-hearted presence in uncertainty. Stay soft in your own void. This is the core initiation. Instead of tightening when life gets unclear, you practice softening. Instead of demanding certainty before you move, you practice courage with humility. Instead of bracing against the void, you learn how to rest inside it, not passively, not naively, but with a steady inner posture that says, I can be here without answers. I can stay open while truth unfolds. The core emphasis in dealing with constriction and the fear of the void. This shadow of constriction and the fear of the void can look like uncertainty, emptiness, loss, the collapse of an identity, the moment old meanings stop working, the silence where you don't know what's next. When that happens, the protective reaction is constriction. The heart is inclined to close. The body tightens naturally. Control increases. Distraction becomes tempting. Opinions become sharper. Everything becomes a little less compassionate. Constriction is what happens when fear says, don't feel this. But the void isn't a punishment. It's a threshold. It's the place where old identities dissolve, so something more authentic can emerge. And here's what's quietly radical. The void becomes less terrifying when you stop treating it like emptiness and start recognizing it as space, space for truth, space for healing, space for real compassion, not the performative kind, but the kind that's born when you realize everyone is vulnerable. This 25th evolutionary pattern of change is basically asking, can you keep your heart open when life doesn't give you certainty? Because that is the spiritual courage Neptune in Aries is training us for. Not fearless people, but people who can feel fear and still choose openness. So let's close with this simple truth of this whole 13-year era. There are stories that tighten the heart and stories that soften it. A fear-based narrative repeats some version of, you are incomplete, the world is unsafe, certainty equals safety, belonging is conditional, don't relax into the unknown. And honestly, that story is exhausting. If constriction burned calories, we'd all be accidentally shredded. But there's another narrative, quiet, persisting, and loving. It doesn't argue with fear. It doesn't force belief. It doesn't demand you be perfect before you're allowed to be human. It shows up through experience, through beauty, unexpected kindness, grace, forgiveness, the resilience of the heart. And that inner whisper says, you're allowed to be here as you are. You're allowed not to have it all figured out. You're allowed to rest inside mystery. This is the voice of self acceptance, the current of universal love. And if there's anything that dissolves fear based influence, whether it comes from culture, systems, other people, or your own inner critic, it's this: a heart that refuses to close. Because when you stay open, you become harder to manipulate through fear. You become clearer in your intuition. You stop outsourcing your worth and you remember who you are beneath the noise. So now I want to say something gently because it matters. If this path feels difficult to navigate alone sometimes, you're not imagining that. Inner work isn't always glamorous. Sometimes it's just you, your feelings, and the uncomfortable realization that your coping mechanisms have an expiration date. So let's normalize support, not as weakness, but as wisdom. That's why our community matters, not to tell you what to believe, but to remind you you're not doing this whole awakening human thing in isolation. If you want a supportive space for real conversation and growth, I host a meetup group called Healing, Knowing, and Growing. If you've been craving connection with people who are walking this path, healing, learning, and evolving in real time, you're warmly welcome. And if this video resonated, help this message reach the people who need it. Like this video, because it tells the algorithm that this video matters. Comment what hit home for you. I really do read them. Share it with someone who's been through the shift, who's feeling this shift, and subscribe if you want more content on healing, consciousness, and navigating this Neptune Aries era. So when the world tells you to tighten, choose to soften, play the contrarian, understand the paradox. When the story says you're not enough, remember that your existence is already a yes. When you face the unknown, don't rush to escape it. Stay open long enough to discover what wants to be born through you. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're not walking this path alone. Thank you for being here and listening to this video as long as you have. I truly appreciate what you're going through, and I appreciate you for courageously going through this process. I look forward to seeing you in my group, and if not, I look forward to providing you further service through these videos to help you navigate this incredible time that we're in. God bless you all on your journey. Namaste, and good life to you all.